Hey everyone, welcome back to In Deep Crit. Today we are back with the first of our new series of videos after our hiatus, and in this video we are going to be doing our pretty much in-depth review of the Destroyer of Worlds mini-campaign for the Alien RPG by Free League. We're going to start with a kind of quick overall kind of what we thought of it. Would you like to play it? Would you like to run it? Kind of thing. And then we're going to go more into depth. So we will tell you at the point we go more into depth where there's going to be spoilers.
Yeah.
So that if you are going to play it, look no further, essentially.
We'll probably put a chapter index thing.
Yeah.
He sorts that out. I don't know how to do that. So hopefully that will make it so that you can just see, oh, I'm coming up to that point. Stop.
Yeah.
Well, so I ran it. You played it.
You did, yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
For players?
For players, on the whole, very enjoyable. It's not without its issues. It's kind of set up as an open world. It's not quite as open world as it's set up to be in places. There's definitely feels like there's a narrative that you are supposed to follow. Which is okay, I don't mind that. I don't mind, having a structured narrative. It was just, I guess it was sold as one thing or expected it to be one thing, and it wasn't quite as open world. Perhaps that's the way we played it as well. There were some decisions we made as a group that, some places we went to that maybe we skipped ahead to, or we, one big area we certainly missed out on, that I know we missed out on. It drags its feet a little bit in the middle section. That would be my main criticism. But other than that, hugely enjoyable to play. I mean, your Space Marines, your Colonial Marines rather. Sorry,
It's all right.
stepping on somebody else's IP there. Colonial Marines.
I think Space Marines is no one's actual IP anymore because it's a bit of an old idea. Just because. Yeah. That's interesting. I think there was, first of all, its build is taking, I think, like 3 or 4 sessions of about 3 to 4 hours, something like that.
Right.
That's a total underestimate. I think we
found that with the one shot, right? That the one shot was not a one shot. So.
No. The only one shot with it that they've produced for Alien that actually is a one shot, in my opinion, is the one that's in the main rulebook, which is called Hope's Last Day, which I have run, and that's that's definitely a case of everyone gets out or they're dead by the it's not quite. This one's you're right, it drags a bit in the middle, and it depends on your play style, depends on what your players are going to skip over. Quite difficult to see how they could skip. Sorry, I'm saying it from a GM review, but for players, it depends what you skip over. You can skip some of it, probably missing out some pretty important parts of the story and making life more difficult for your game mother. So it depends on what you're playing.
The concept is your Colonial Marines on a moon that for science reasons has oil on it, and or for story reasons rather than science reasons, I suppose.
Let's get on the science of that very quickly. If there is alien life, it's possible that it could be oil elsewhere. So since it's called, I must admit, I initially went what, and then I thought, yeah, that's reasonable, maybe.
You're like a hodgepodge squad that's been thrown together from various different squads to address a situation, a problem that has occurred, against the backdrop of the moon's about to be invaded by the space commies, and there's stuff that's going to happen.
They're quite interesting characters you'll get to play.
They are, yeah.
With a nice variation between a sort of gung-ho Marine and ones who have, if not more subtlety than some other agenda to them that makes them interesting.
The command structure I thought was a bit... I felt it got in the way a little bit. Perhaps if everybody was more of a similar rank, the group role-playing may have come more naturally.
Yeah, that's the point. So I think I declared fairly early on, I don't want the person who's in command to be in command. But it's very difficult to role-play when someone's a captain and everyone else is a private, that isn't going to have an effect. So perhaps if they'd made it one person's the sergeant or the corporal or whatever, and it just it just slightly doesn't. Yeah, we're going to have to reveal more in our full review, but bear in mind that, and our advice, both as the GM who ran it and the as a player, I think is the same as much as possible ignore the rank element, which,
Yeah.
because our group's pretty heavy, roleplay heavy. If you're playing this more as an action horror, you might possibly be playing it more as it was envisaged, but we were playing it as a sort of action horror, but with a huge emphasis on sort of interpersonal, inter-character roleplay. So it depends on what your
true.
depends on what your bag is. Maybe it would be quicker if we didn't go in depth in character motivations and stuff.
I mean, the quick review is I really enjoyed playing it, and I would certainly run it for a group. I probably wouldn't play it again because I know too much. I know too much, man.
He thinks he does.
Well, yeah. But it's certainly one I would run for a fresh group. Yeah.
Yeah. I would run it again. I'd make some changes. Anyway, that's the player review. At this point, yeah, we both can get thumbs up. We won't give it our rating yet, but you can imagine it's not going to be a bad rating. I think this is the point where you need to go away if you're planning on playing this, because from here on in, you will just ruin your experience.
You will, yeah.
So, if you have a moment to consider your life choices, and then here it comes. So it's broken into game masters, game mothers. It's broken into 3 acts, classic 3-act structure, with a sort of different feel and different pace to each of those each of those acts. The first act is very much like a manhunt. You're looking for AWOL Marines. They've been infected by a bioweapon. You can imagine this being alien, what that bioweapon might possibly be. But there are some surprises. Those surprises make the denouement of that particular act work quite well. Your team, those that survive, will eventually go to an insurgent location to retrieve the last of the AWOL Marines, having failed to save one Marine, witness the gruesome death of another Marine, and possibly have befriended or captured the third of the 4. But the 4th, that's the creature feature at the end of the first act.
Yeah.
Do you want to summarise Act 2?
Yeah. So Act 2 is... So it's essentially a race against time to get back to Fort Nebraska, which is the central fort on the moon, which is, I believe, called Arrakis. Am I confusing that with somebody else?
That's Dune. Ariacus, yeah.
Ariacus.
Something like that.
Similar, yeah. So you've got this information, and you need to get back to the base to deal with that and to report in to your commanding officer. As that happens, the space commies, I forget the
They're the Union of Progressive Peoples, the UPP.
Yeah, the space commies arrive. There's a huge battle in orbit. There's dropships landing. There's troops landing. Android death squads hunting you down. Tanks rolling through the street. That kind of thing. Yeah, and this is where I thought it got bogged down. This is where I thought the action got bogged down. It felt like it was kind of just put in there for some obstacles.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a straight run back to Fort Nebraska. It was we can't have them just leg it back and report in. We need to fill this out somehow, and it did feel a bit fillery.
At the end of that,
the end of the act's really good.
Yeah.
Because this bioweapon is dropped, and space commies and colonial marines and civilians alike all get turned into horrific creatures. There's quite a good end to that act to set up the events of Act 3.
Yeah.
It just felt like there was a bit of just dallying around for kind of no reason. Maybe that was our group. Maybe we got bogged down doing stuff that we maybe could have just left alone.
It is the section that bogs us down. It is the section that bogs us down because we were just doing a quick summary. Anyway, I see the point.
Yeah.
It is the problem act, and that's why,
Yeah.
because it's not very easy to talk about. They go from the insurgent base to Fort Nebraska during the time they'll get shot down in a dropship. There's an invasion by the UPP, and some black goo bomb goes off. Also, all the starships up in orbit just go silent because presumably they've been blown up. That's the run of it. But not to knock your review of it, because that's exactly the problem. You've highlighted all the issues with it. I've got a couple I think it boils down to, and I'll do it here since you've just mentioned. I think it boils down to this problem. You're on the main colony map going from point A to point B, and you can go any route you like, but there's an obvious route. And within that, you then have a number of events, which is typical for these cinematic scenarios, to throw at the group. You can throw one or two, you can throw, I think there's about 6 or so of them. And I didn't actually throw all of them, I threw too many, used too many of these events. But let's face it, it's because it's an act, it's supposed to have some depth to it, and yet it is otherwise fairly hollow. Maybe it's a chase. I very nearly wiped them all out with these androids, that was great fun. Shot down a couple of player characters pretty quickly with them. And there was some stuff I could have gone into a bit further, but I could read my group were not enjoying this act as much as the previous act, or as much as I thought they'd enjoy the third act. So, third act, quick summary, and then we'll review it, if that's all right. Sorry to be.
Yep, go for it.
I'm the bossy one, you can tell that, right?
You good? You want to do it?
Well, you do.
Boss?
I've just taken over. All right, go on. Sorry.
So Act 3 is inside Fort Nebraska trying to work out what's going on. Then ultimately it's trying to get off the planet. It's trying to survive this situation. There's no possible way that this ragtag bunch of Marines could deal with the issue. So let's GTFO as quickly as possible. It's not straightforward to do that. There's certain things that need to be done. As is typical with Alien games, each character has their own agenda, so some people want certain things, others want to just get out there as quickly as possible. Go up through the levels of Fort Nebraska, get onto the space elevator. There's a big alien queen who's busy laying eggs on the space elevator. It's getting past her. Oh, it's in the cargo area, isn't it? Before
it's the cargo area of the space elevator.
Of the space elevator. So then it's trying to get past her and get out of there as quickly as possible without dying.
Yeah,
basically.
There's sort of like up until this point there. So this is all about this Project Life Force thing, which is basically the program to weaponize xenomorphs, and the player characters have the opportunity to find out some things like that. There's particular issues with an android that's been taking control of Chaplin, who's probably one of the player characters, depends on the size of your group, but a good player character choice. So if you can get one of your group to play Chaplin, it's good, because for the first act, Chaplin is the enemy. This enemy android called Jail, whose motivations are basically cover up, kill anyone who knows anything, has any evidence. Which
was played really well by the guy who played it.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. And then in the second act, Chaplin is free of that influence, and some of the third act free of it, and then suddenly has to fight for control of himself again. Unfortunately, in a really obvious place. So it's probably like, well, that happened, and we're just looking at a woman who's plugged into it. And I thought about doing it at different times, but it's like quite clearly this is when this happens.
Yeah.
It's the third act is, I think, definitely the best act in the sense that it returns to, I think you said it actually previously, that it's like the return to the haunted house feel of Chariot of the Gods. And the difference here is that the creatures you face one of these massive things called a charger, which, because dice are dice, they killed in one round, but it should really have wiped half of them out. And it's just a build-up of, encountering the Colonel Myers that they can't trust, who's got a chestburster in him. One of the
Wayland Yutani woman who was more trustworthy, I think, than a lot of our party thought she was.
I played her differently from perhaps how you expected me to. I mean, that's the interesting thing about this. There is some scope for choosing how certain characters, NPCs, are portrayed. I turned the insurgent leader, who it wasn't clearly a South African guy, but I made him South African because his name was Botas, and I thought it was Biters, so just put on a city flicking accent and tried to do. I'm not very good at it, but anyway, that inevitably led some of the party to think that, you know, because he was an NPC, he was the insurgent guy, he was the enemy, but it was left rather open, and he came in the third act. That wasn't strictly scripted, it was just he was an NPC who hadn't died, and I thought it was important to. You needed backup, so he was convenient.
We did need backup by that point, yes.
The actual player characters themselves, what would you say about them, the Marines that you're in the squad with? Because I think you probably worked out the agendas.
Yeah,
ultimately,
I'd say they're all fairly well rounded. It depends on who's playing whom, I guess.
Yes.
So my character actually made it all the way through and made it off the planet. We're not entirely sure what happens off the planet, but certainly made it off the planet.
You'll find out.
Cool.
You'll find out.
Bits all over the system. So I was playing a gunnery sergeant, so I was kind of in the middle of the command structure at the beginning. Quite rapidly found himself elevated to the top of the command structure.
Yes.
He was a good character. I'm not actually sure if he was set up as a he originally, but I played it as a he.
I think no, it wasn't. I believe it's a male character with PTSD basically, because you've encountered
the only person who's encountered these things before on a
but don't really know
classified.
Yeah.
Just remembers teeth and death essentially. So there's some good backstory to that. There's a juiced up kind of I can't remember what they're called, but they're essentially bred soldiers.
Artificial womb. Marine.
Who's he's the grunt, he's the kill everything kind of.
With the specific agenda of killing a xenomorph in hand-to-hand combat, which the lunatic who played him actually achieved.
Actually managed.
Shortly before you put a bullet in his head because he'd been jabbed with the xenomorph's tail, and you guys didn't know. Obviously, the players knew, but the characters didn't know whether or not that was how you got infected because they hadn't encountered any face huggers, hadn't got that information. So you played very nicely, which was your agenda was don't allow any contamination to pass.
My character's agenda was do not allow anything off the planet. So I made sure that the nukes were set off at the base before we left, or were on a timer. Anybody, even the slightest sniff of infection, and I was putting a bullet in the head.
So Dante was a female marine. She's pretty cool. Played very nicely.
Frosty
Mama, we nicknamed. Yeah, it's great. They came up with their own little call signs. It was cool. Some people really got into it, and it was nice. But one of the problems with her as a character was her agenda. Is basically she's got a chest burster in her, and that's cool because you can hint at it, and then suddenly the dawning realization. But within the adventure, it's like, this many shifts into Act 3.
Pop.
And by that many shifts into Act 3, I mean, playtesting should have revealed.
There's very few characters left.
Yeah, there isn't much chance for her to carry on, and if you basically are ending the game there. And also, to be fair, it's really unfair because there's not been an opportunity to deal with it. There may possibly have been earlier, but you've literally witnessed someone die on an operating table before you're really sure that you've got this thing. And the person who found out she was infected was the android who was.
It was
on the bad side, trying to keep her at that point. So we obviously gave her the false information. So I sort of house ruled that, which does that anytime she took a panic roll, I think, then she'd have to make a stamina check. And if she succeeded, no pop. If she failed, or got a face hugger on it or whatever, bang, that was it. We were birthing it. So it wasn't just like a GM fiat. Oh, now's the time. Yeah, there are times I would absolutely do it for dramatic effect and choose when, but only if I've given a player, as I did in Chariot of the Gods, and the guy ignored me saying, you've got a really bad headache, Okay, third time I tell you, helmet full of blood. That's all everyone else sees, and like little claw. Yeah. So
with that, with the you kind of homebrewing a little bit on that. As a game mother, how would you say the module is written, the campaign is written?
Well, one of the things I've got the physical copy, and so you'll hopefully see, I will put it up here, a little sort of reveal of what that is. Well, you have already seen it. I'll put it in the video so you get a chance to look at the product. Very happy about that. I think it's a beautiful product. Would have loved to run it at a table rather than on a VTT.
Yeah.
Running it on a VTT, we did the Roll20 port of it, and it left an awful lot to be desired. Everything from like the character tokens, which I had to effectively make because the ones that they had on Roll20 at the time, maybe they've updated it. It wouldn't have been very difficult, as I've seen they've done with other modules, to take the character image, the portrait from the art, and use that to make a token. Well, I wasn't there. I did that. Just little details like that, and then some of the maps are not scaled.
The scaling was weird.
Scaling was inconsistent and off.
And the maps were not particularly immersive, in my opinion.
No.
Kind of this green print, blueprint kind of map, which is cool if you're looking at something on a computer terminal, I guess. If this is the map that you pull up on a computer terminal, but for when you're using it in tactical combat, for me it felt like another layer of separation.
See, that's the trick, isn't it? Because it's on a tabletop, I just put the map down and you'd be like, that's the map. Cool. And then we talk about, well, you're here. And you see all of it all in one go. Doesn't have to be concealed. But on a VTT, there's the tendency to want to use it, particularly, if you're watching this and you use a VTT, maybe you've played a D&D module in VTT, you've probably been used to your players actually moving through a dungeon like a dungeon crawl. It's very tempting to do that, and it was set up as if that's what you could do. So that's what I did. Not a good idea. I'm more than happy to just have all the maps up and say, well, you're somewhere here, and we'll call this as a theatre of the mind exercise. But then you want a tactical combat. It didn't quite gel. Now, I would certainly take blame in the sense that I could have done it better. And we'll see, because I'll be running the Colonial Marines Operations Manual campaign, and this will also be an issue there.
But some of it is also, we're reviewing it, so how easy is it to use first time around?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So with some other systems, it's very easy to jump on a VTT, buy the module on a VTT, and it's all done for you, and it's fairly straightforward. There are bells and whistles you can add to it to make it super fly, but essentially you can buy a module. A lot of games you can buy a module and just run it without any extra work by the DM, GM.
Storyteller, whatever. No, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So we're getting on for just over 20 minutes on this video. We want to try and keep these videos kind of short as possible.
We
had one other issue, I guess, with the module, which was
box text.
Box text. I think we've addressed box text before on our channel. Sometimes box text is useful.
For some GMs, it's more useful than others.
For some GMs, it's very useful. There is some box text in this, and you decided to run it pretty much as written. There were a couple of things you changed, but you thought, if we're going to review it, we'll do all the box text. Thoughts on the box text?
I'll keep it very brief. It's overwritten. My players didn't much like it. It's too long for the most part. Some of the dialogue elements of it just don't land. For a very well written module, which does have its issues, like things like bits on the map where you look at one map and then there's an elevator and it doesn't line up to the other elevator. It's like, what? It's got little problems like that. But the box text is just a consistent issue for me in these. I just don't think they're very, maybe they would belong in a novel.
It would work. Yeah. In a novel, perhaps it would work.
It's not my style, but I can see someone who writes that way, their style, carrying it off. It's fine. Yeah. So I've got to be careful not to get into that kind of literary criticism stuff.
It was too long and overwritten for box text,
and for this setting as well.
And for this setting, and that's simply the kind of the niggle with it. But
Yeah.
on the whole, I mean, I think you enjoyed running it. I certainly enjoyed playing it.
Yeah, I was a little bit frustrated by how long it went on, but that's all the player's fault, really.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
a good
we
module. Yeah, and I tried to kill them so many times. I don't have a problem with killing players. Player characters I like to leave on, but no, seriously, it's a good module. It's not as good as, for me. I enjoyed running Chariot of the Gods an awful lot more. We'll see whether I like the longer form campaign play within Alien. This is somewhere between those 2 points, and maybe that's why it was not either as compelling for me as Chariot of the Gods, or I think as freeform and open as I'm expecting the Colonial Marines operations map to be.
Yeah. So I think because we've given Aliens the system as a whole a review of our top review of the crit.
Yeah.
We gave Chariot of the Gods the crit.
Yeah.
For me, this falls into good crit. There's bits of it that are the crit. There's bits of it that are crit and miss. So putting that together gives, for me, a rating of good crit.
Separating it out, I'd say the Roll20 module is crit and miss. The box text is crit and miss. Act 2 is crit and miss. Act 1 is good crit, bordering on the crit, and Act 3 is definitely the crit. It's great. Yeah. It's great fun. So overall, if you're looking for a number out of 5, it's a 5 being the best, it would be a 5. Yeah. 5 being the worst, it would be a 1. No, it's a 2 or a 4. It's not quite. It's a step down from either. So that, I'd agree with your assessment.
That's Destroyer of Worlds for Aliens. If you've played it, tell us what you think. If you've run it, tell us what you think. Or maybe this has inspired you to go out and get it and give it a go. Come back and tell us what you think. Tell us, your opinion on it.
Yeah, maybe it was just me running it wrong. Happens. Till next time.
Indeed.
So this is the unboxing for the Alien Destroyer of Worlds box set. You can see, first of all, it comes nicely packaged, and it's filled to the brim with lots of different parts. You've got all these cards, story cards. It's obviously become a bit shaken up inside, and onto the maps that we discuss in our review to some extent. Obviously, when we played this, it was on a virtual tabletop. This was the Roll20 version of it. I'm at the moment running the Colonial Marines Operation Manual campaign on a Foundry implementation, and at some point when we review that, we might talk about differences we've seen. The actual contents of this box, the quality of these maps, the card that's used to print them on, you've got the handbrake outbreak at your forestation there. The quality's top notch. It's really well printed, good material. The cards are solid feeling. They don't feel like they're going to fall apart in the hands. They're not going to wear out very quickly, certainly not through a playthrough. I had this to one side whilst I was running the mini campaign. It was always very useful to be able to refer to. I always like to have a physical copy when possible. Would I run this again if I was running it face to face? Absolutely. And I think that the frustrations that we've at times mentioned within our review that you've probably just seen of the mini campaign as a whole, it's still a sort of cinematic scenario. Those frustrations I could have learned from, and perhaps there'd be less of an issue with running at a physical tabletop. These maps, as you'll see, these are the character sheets we're looking at the moment. They're quite nicely detailed. Here's the main map. On it, it's fantastically detailed. It still has some of the errors that we mentioned with regards to like elevators not joining up on different levels the way they should do. There's an elevator that doesn't seem to link up. But again, the quality of this is great. It's almost good enough that I'm tempted to put it up on my wall. Fort Nebraska is a fantastically cool setting, and it's the most fun part of the whole mini campaign. But then again, it was great traipsing through Ariarchus and having the player characters have all sorts of trouble. So in terms of what you're getting in this box, it's top notch. In terms of the cinematic scenario. It's really that Act 2. It's a little while since we played. It still sticks in my mind as being something that could have been done better. But again, this is down to perhaps who's running it. So you've got the full detail within the booklet. Obviously, this is a softback book, you can see, but it's again got the usual commitment to quality. These are very nicely printed pages. I'm not saying it's going to stand up to a whole load of punishment, but yeah, giving a thumbs up. And there we are. So that's that for the unboxing, and I hope you've found it interesting.